start with telling me a little bit about you two, and how did you get started with developing the organization Brigid's Path?
Okay. Well, a little background on both of us. We're both teachers. We stayed at home for the last 13 years. Is it 13? It's 13 for me now.
12 for me.
And before that, we were teachers. And 2 years ago, my family became a foster family. And we started, the day that we met, got our license from our caseworker. They called us that night with a 3-pound baby that was in the NICU who needed to, I brought mine too, who needed to have a place to live. And so that night we went and picked up a 3-pound baby from the hospital who was withdrawing from heroin. And really didn't know what that meant because in training as a foster parent, they didn't give us a lot. We knew that drugs were involved with a lot of these families that were, losing their children, that sort of thing, but not a lot of information about this special baby that would be withdrawing from heroin. And within a month, well, I guess I could say that very night, how I knew that this baby was so different. And Deanna lives just down the street from me, and she had come over to bring me burp cloths. I didn't really have anything but a crib and a car seat because I really wasn't expecting to have a baby that night that I got licensed. And she brought burp cloths over. I was feeding this little baby just a teeny little bottle, and he drank it up, and I was so happy that, because I'm like, oh, he's going to thrive and do well. But then he started to vomit and then aspirate, and he stopped breathing. And I'm holding him, rubbing his back, kind of getting nervous at this point because I'm really comfortable. I have 3 children of my own. They're 9, 11, and 13, and very comfortable with babies. But this guy, he wasn't responding and coughing through and coming. And Deanna's picking up the phone to call 911 because we thought, oh my gosh, we don't want to have this baby unresponsive sitting here.
So you guys were friends before. And,
We've been friends for about 7 years.
I think so.
Since your daughter went in the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
So when I first heard about it.
Yeah, so she was 6 when that happened. So 6 years?
6 years.
6.5 years.
Okay.
And he ended up starting breathing again and being okay. But at that moment is when I knew I had a different baby, a special baby that needed special needs met that I hadn't taken care of before. So I went to the internet to learn about how to take care of what special needs these babies have. And within a month, I had another baby withdrawing from heroin. So I had 2. It was like having twins.
Were you told ahead of time that you would have, that these infants were withdrawing from heroin, or?
They do tell you when they call to ask if you'll take them.
Okay.
They give you anything that they know about that child. There's been calls where baby's been removed from mom, but we know nothing about the baby. Those kind of calls, but in the hospital, when you're getting them straight from the hospital, they tell you every medical detail that they know.
Okay.
So in my case, I did know, but I realized at that point, if I am one family here in the Miami Valley with 2 babies withdrawing, how bad is this epidemic? And I just started researching it. And through my research, I found this place in West Virginia called Lily's Place. And she was opening a newborn recovery center because Huntington was, their hospital was overrun with babies being born addicted. And I told Deanna, follow her on Facebook. This girl's really doing really cool things. And actually, Deanna and I met here in May 2014 for breakfast.
Right here in this one?
Right here. We were just a couple tables over. We met here, and she had been watching my family and kind of following Lily's Place, and I had said that I really want to go and see what she's doing. I really feel called to do something bigger here, and Deanna's like, well, let's just try it out there. So May 2014, we drove to West Virginia and visited the facility there, and she was not operational at the time. It wasn't until about 6 months later that she became operational. But as I was leaving there, and I just loved the model that she had created, there were some things that I saw that I'd do differently, but all in all, she inspired me to want to do that here. And I said, Deanna, I feel like we're called to do this together, and I feel like you're here for a reason. And she said,
no way, good luck with that. I said, you're using the wrong pronoun, my friend. And this is a you thing, not a we thing.
And I knew something bigger was happening here, and I
actually had started in prayer about 7 months prior about where sort of the Lord would have me when my son went off to kindergarten that following fall. So he was going to kindergarten in the fall 2014. I started about almost a year before that, started to figure me out. What was I going to do when I grew up after being a stay-at-home mom for years? And I'd been a teacher prior, and I had let my teaching license go as a step in faith that summer, and just wasn't sure where I was supposed to go. I actually took a trip with a friend to California in November and to find myself, and I came home with nothing. Had a great time in California, but I came home with nothing. No direction, no guidance. But I had been following Jill and her family with their babies and supporting them and encouraging them in their journey, but never ever envisioned myself in this position. But as we were driving home in the van that day, and she said, "No, we can do this." And it didn't take me very long. It was a little back and forth with us in the car, but it didn't take very long for me to kind of hop on board, because I don't think I've ever been more prepared to do anything by virtue of my life, because I was one of these babies. My mother is a drug addict, and I was one of these babies. I was born to teenage parents in the 70s, and they married out of obligation because they were pregnant with me. My mother dropped out of high school to give birth to me, and their marriage didn't last very long, as many teenage marriages don't. And so I went to live with my mother. And in the 70s, that's kind of what happened. There wasn't a lot of due process. There wasn't a lot of figuring out what is the best placement for baby. Just baby belongs with mom.
Right.
And so I went to live with my mother in an apartment above a shoe store in a rural town in Miami County, just north of here. And it wasn't very long before her addiction got the best of her, and she just couldn't do it anymore. So my dad told me that he got a call from a friend, and I was alone in the apartment all by myself, waving to people on the street.
How old were you?
2. I went to live with my dad, his parents, and his 16-year-old sister. And she was super thrilled at 16 to have a 2-year-old sleeping in her room. Maybe not so much. Her name is Brenda. I would wake her up in the night and say, "Brenda, I love you." And she'd be like, "Go back to sleep, little girl. I love you too, but I have to go to high school in the morning." And we lived there until I was 5. And my dad then married a single mother. She had, I think she was probably 3 at the time. I think she's only a couple of years younger than me. And together they had a daughter in short order. And I went to a place where I heard I was loved, I was worthy, I didn't have to earn any of that, and that someone was willing to sacrifice for me. Not because of anything I had done, but just because of who he was. And I'd never really heard that ever. I only had ever heard that I really wasn't worthy. And I loved being there. I just loved hearing that. I think every child should hear that. Every child should hear that they're worthy. And it wasn't something I really had ever heard. And so I kept going until we moved, and we moved not too long after. And then we moved to a place, just a rental house in the middle of town. But fortunately for me, in that little town, there are only about 4,000 people, but there are 13 churches.
Okay.
And so there was a church just right down the street. There actually were 3 churches within walking distance. And it never has mattered to me what the sign on the outside says. I think we all get caught up in the politics of it's this kind of church or it's that denomination. And really, inside of any of those churches, I've been to all of them, the message is always the same. You are worthy. You are loved.